Pesky's Pest Control. Put your birds on the run. Call 205-470-8161.
Hey, so today on the podcast, we want to talk about dryer vent cleaning. And I have my good friend, Matt Parker with Jobtown Dryer Vent Cleaning. Matt, how you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing great, man. Doing great. So let's dive right into it. Tell me a little bit about your story, your business, how you got started, all that.
Awesome. Yeah. So been a fireman for 15 years and originally started out pressure washing. So I was pressure washing, me and another guy at the current fire department that I'm at. He had a pressure washing business as well. And one night he ran across basically it was a TikTok video, I think. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And it was dryer vent cleaning. Guy was just, running an air compressor with a hose into somebody's dryer vent, slinging lint all over the place. He's like, "I think there might be something there." So that piqued our interest. So when we were going to houses, both he and I we go to houses to pressure wash, we start looking at dryer vents and or the vent caps and seeing lots of just clogged stuff. Like we saw something that we could actually help. Being a fireman, both of us had been on actual dryer fires, so we kind of saw a need as well. And so we basically kind of just started doing research. We reached out to companies in Tennessee, reached out to companies in Arizona, companies in Texas. Texas is a lot bigger than it is here. There's several guys that are actually firemen as well. So we reached out to guys in Atlanta. We're just, doing our research, doing our due diligence, trying to figure out if this is something that we feel like, we could sustain. And, everything just kind of fell into our lap. Honestly, we found out about certifications that we went and got. It's a CDEC certification that allows us to, we know exactly what we're doing now with dryer vent cleaning. So that was a huge getting that CDEC stuff. And, so it's just been slowly and surely growing. It's been amazing. That's basically where it started. We just, like I said, we saw a need and, being firemen, we know the dangers of not cleaning out your dryer vent, what it can lead to. And, we just wanted to, make a difference.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It's funny because, that's how I started Pesky's. I mean, I took a part-time job. I was a firefighter as well. We worked together. And it fell into my lap, started a company, and here we are. So yes. And I've also been on dryer vent fires. It's very, very common. I think people just kind of don't know how common it really is. So,
right. Yeah. The NFPA, the last numbers that I've seen, obviously this is, in our research, we found this out. The last numbers I think were from, I want to say 15. So they haven't done a survey, but there was I want to say close to 15,000 structure fires that were due to dryer vents.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a lot more common than you think.
Well, and that lint is so, I mean, it lights on fire so quickly. I mean, it's the best kindling for really any fire, and
absolutely
it'll burn your house down quick. So
yeah. And you have an appliance that's providing heat to it. So
yep,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. So
well, so how'd you come up with the name?
So the name is, just going back to our firefighter roots. So when around the station, we get a fire, we get a wreck, or anything that is going on that we get toned out on, it's called a job. We're going to a job. So we just just some slang, honestly, that came about at the fire station. It's just Jobtown. We're going to Jobtown. So me and the guy that I started this company with, both firemen, "Hey, what do you think about Jobtown?" And it was kind of tongue in cheek, just something different, honestly, something that's kind of sets us apart. What is Jobtown, so we can tell our story. But anyway, so just being a fireman run and operated business, it just fit. Jobtown's just kind of like, okay, yeah, I like it. So we just ran with it. So that's where the name came from.
I love it. Love the logo, love the name. I love the story. So it's great. I mean, coming from the firefighter background, of course.
Right.
So why should we clean our dryer vents? Obviously, we talked about the potential structure fire, but what are some other issues that, like we talked about before, not a lot of people think about dryer vents as something that need to be maintained, cleaned. I know I certainly didn't. until I got in the fire service and started seeing, the repercussion to that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I it's something that I never really even thought about either. Most of my dryers were on exterior walls and that I've had personally, and never really had an issue myself. But like you said, we've run it, we've seen it, we know the dangers of it. We see there's numbers that are out there, and the main things that there's a ton of things that have happened. I've been to somebody's house that had several bins and they had a break in their dryer vent, and it started creating a water issue. So this lint gets in there, and if it's not able to get out, all it is moist air that is just getting pushed to this dryer, and eventually it becomes dry over time. Over that 60 minutes that the dryer is running, it becomes dry and it dries out and eventually just rolls out of your vent. If it's not venting properly, all that moisture just sits in there and it finds a low spot like water will, and then it'll just start leaking. So they thought they had a plumbing leak. They didn't know what was going on. Like, I think I got like 2 gallons of water out of this daggum dryer vent. Yeah, wet lint just sitting there. It's just soaking that stuff up. It was disgusting. So it's not just fires. You can have water issues. You can have just, if you're in a crawl space and you've got a broken pipe, and you just got lint and just moisture and mold can start building up, it's just a giant mess. So one, it's can just be messy and an irritant. Two, it can create mold issues in your house. I've seen several. There was another one that I went to. I don't know how they had standing water when I got done cleaning it. Still, that there's just really nothing that I could do about it. I can't run a sponge up in there. It's just one of these things where there was no airflow at the end. They had a huge clot at the beginning, and it was just sitting in there. There was no air movement. So it's just water and moisture just building up over time, and it just has nowhere to go. So once we got that cleaned out, air moving over it, eventually it's going to dry out and it's going to do what it needs to do. But there's a lot more problems. You can burn dryers up. Seen several dryers that have burned up. That's an expensive appliance that if you just do some proper maintenance on it, the thing will last. They're supposed to last a long time. You can get it last 10 years just by taking care of this. Like the only thing it wants to do is it wants to pull air in, it wants to heat it, and it wants to move it out. Like as long as it can do that, it'll last for a very long time. So that's, it's cutting down on energy. It's more energy efficient if the dryer can run like it's supposed to. There's several benefits to it. And I tell people it's probably one of the most neglected areas in our homes that require normal maintenance. It's kind of like an oil change for your house is basically what we're talking about.
Well, and there's nothing worse than you're going to, take out the wet clothes, because I've had this happen to me. So you're going to take out the wet clothes from your washer, throw them in the dryer, and then it doesn't work or it doesn't heat your clothes. And now you got, a sopping wet mess. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So just for the typical homeowner, what are some signs before they would call you? What are some signs that they would see their dryer, that knowing that it needed to get cleaning, what would that look like?
There's 3 major ones, and I'm like the one you were just talking about. You take wet clothes to your dryer and they don't get dry. You're running several loads just to get some sheets dry. I had to run it 3 times. First sign. Second sign is, so when we get a clog in our system, we get a clog in our vent, that dryer, that hot air can't move out. So if you go and touch your dryer and it's hot to touch, it should be warm is fine. Like, you go put your hand on it, not a big deal. Your dryer's working. It's good. Hot, like this thing is really hot. This isn't normal. That's another sign that you've got a dryer vent issue. And your third, like your room will just heat up. Like I had a lady whose vent was broke. And she's like, it just gets so hot in here. I've even heard of people having their walls sweating just because there's so much moisture in there. So if you have any of that stuff going on, you really have a real problem. So your dryer hot to touch, drying multiple loads, room is warm. If your walls start sweating, those are all signs that you've got an issue with your dryer vent. So, and it's not, most people are just going to say, I got a dryer problem. No, you don't have a dryer problem. Dryer's doing what it needs to do. It just can't breathe. You have a vent problem. You're not allowing the dryer to do what it wants to do. So.
Well, like you said, with the analogy of a car, you cover the exhaust. It's the same exact thing. You're not going to
exactly.
It's got to breathe somehow.
Right. So. And the beauty of these newer ones now, like they'll give you codes,
Yeah.
like older dryers, they'll just keep rocking until they burn up. They either the appliance burns up or your house catches on fire or, whatever. So these new ones, they'll throw you a little D80, which are, that's just one that I hear about a lot. So it's like 80% block. So
Okay.
they know that they have a problem. D90, D95. I mean, they'll get high.
So it actually tells you the blockage in the unit itself, or it
Yeah,
tells
so
you you got a problem.
I think they have a pressure reader, I think, built into the dryer. So once that back pressure starts hitting it, and I guess it can register. That's the only thing I can think of. That's the only way I know that it's recognizing that there's an issue in the vent.
Well, that's pretty cool right there. So walk me through your process of how you do it. You get on scene and you start, working. What is your process?
Sure. So another thing that separates us too is, we want to provide customer service. Like that is first and foremost what we want to do. So we're going to show up, we're going to introduce ourselves, and we're going to go, get you to take us to the dryer. Once we get there, we're going to cut it on, and we're going to work our way outside. So we're going to go outside, and the thing that we're looking for the most, and it tells us, it points us in the direction of where we need to go, is we're getting an airflow reading. So, there's a standard that a dryer has, and we know real quick if your dryer is not performing to that standard, just by the airflow reading, what's coming out. We're looking at your vent cap as well while we're up there. So those things clog up and can create a huge problem. I've seen several that just have a vent cap issue. Like there's nothing wrong with it. The dryer vent's fine, but the vent cap's completely blocked, and you start getting that blockage and you start getting those problems like we talked about earlier. So while we're up there at your termination, we're going to get an airflow reading, and we're going to clean everything from there. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Then we're going to come down. Most of them, honestly, too, are on roofs, and that's another thing. If you have a dryer in an area of convenience, it's a necessity that you get your dryer vent cleaned out. If you're on an exterior wall and it's just blowing right out, your biggest problem is changing your transition hose and making sure that it's good. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but like most of our homes now that are being built, they put their dryers in areas of convenience, and that's where you start getting these problems. So most of them are on roofs. That's where I was going with that. So we'll go up on the roof, clean that thing out, come back inside. Once we come back inside, we pull the dryer away from the wall. We clean up anything behind the dryer. We're vacuuming, we're wiping down with microfiber cloths. We're doing, we're just taking care of that area that just, once again, is just neglected. Nobody's pulling the dryer away from the wall and cleaning it. So we go ahead while we're back there. We'll vacuum baseboards. We wipe everything, wipe all the walls down, all the lint that's collected back there over the years, how long it's been since it's been moved. And then we pull the transition hose off and we inspect that. We make sure that it's good. Check it out, make sure it's up to code, no major holes or anything like that can be causing problems. Once we do that, if it's in good shape, we'll clean that and set it aside. Then we'll go to the back of the dryer where the vent is on the dryer where the air actually exits, and we will clean that as well, put a vacuum on that. And that's another thing too. We have a vacuum system that we are vacuuming everything up. So there's no lint or anything that's getting blown throughout your house. Everything's getting pulled to a vacuum system that has filters and bags. So it's super clean. So we'll clean the back of your dryer out, and then we have an inspection camera that will run the entire length of your vent. So your vent, depending on how long it is, we'll go through checking out making sure all your turns are in shape and intact, making sure that there's nothing intruding into your dryer vent. That's a big code violation, and it just creates it just grabs lint and creates problems. So we'll look for that. And then we'll just make sure that it's, it also allows us to know the length. So you can only have a dryer vent. If it's a straight run from the back of your dryer all the way out of your house, it's 35 feet. That's code. That's all you can have is 35 feet. So in every bend and every 45, it cuts down on that just because it creates so much friction. So we get an idea how long your vent is, and we can tell you stuff like that too. So it's and we get some good before pictures so we can share with everybody. Everybody likes to see. We like to show our work too, so you know for a fact what you're getting. So it's just another thing that just providing that service for those customers. So we'll get all those before and after pictures, make sure everything's good with the vent, bring everything out, and we have a brush. We agitate. You see all these YouTube videos and all this stuff where these guys just put blowers or vacuums on their vents and they just blow a bunch of lint out. It works great, they're not agitating that stuff. That stuff will stick, especially if you have dogs and cats. I've got two. So, I mean, like, I understand their hair and lint becomes like concrete. Like, you can blow all that loose stuff that's just in there. Yeah, it's going to come out. It's still stuck to your walls. If you don't have a way to agitate that and to get that and scrub that off the walls, it's just going to stay in there.
Especially if it's wet.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, it's not going to get blown out with a blower, I promise you.
Right.
So we take a brush system and a drill, and we agitate. It's a 4-inch brush that hits all the way up all sides of your, it's round, so it hits everything in your dryer vent. We pull everything to it. If it's a vertical, we kind of let gravity help us out. It falls down. We vacuum everything up. If it's a horizontal dryer vent, it goes up and kind of out the side of your house. We'll actually go to the outside of the house, cut the vacuum on, and we push everything in to the vacuum system so it's cleaned. Once we've done that, we rerun the camera, make sure that it's good, show you the good after pictures, and then put everything back together for you. So that is what, that's what you get when we come out to your house and give you a dryer vent cleaning. That's what you're getting. We're not cutting any corners, and everyone gets that same service.
Well, I love how you run the camera. I love that you're showing, your customer exactly, what you're seeing before and after. So, and I love you're offering a free inspection to make sure that there is no, code violation. Because
absolutely,
like you've talked about with me, you're running into a lot of code violations.
Absolutely. Yes. Huge code violations, which create lots of problems. That's where your fires typically come from. So, that if your vent is up to code and everything's good, it needs to be cleaned. If your vent is out of code and you're running transition hose through walls, just as well as I do how friction builds up. And you've got, let's just, my old partner called it slinky dog hose. It's that, it's aluminum foil wrapped, it's just wire wrapped with aluminum foil essentially. Everything that we put on is UL certified. So, it's been tested, but it's for, it's a transition. It is to transition your dryer to your vent. It is not a dryer vent. It's a transition hose. It says it's in the name. So when you run transition hose into a wall and down and out, and it's got all these turns, and we like to pull it as tight as we can and then make it as short as possible. So like it's super tight. We connect it with worm drives, and then as we push the dryer together, it's a super short. There's not a lot of friction in there, and it does well. It serves its purpose. But when you run it into a wall and run it's extremely long runs, these things are 30-foot long, and you're doing that. Now you have all these ridges that are creating friction, not allowing that vent to flow like it needs to. You've got lint building up in there, and it's super thin. So we're going back to now, if we get a hole in this, you're going to be blowing lint everywhere. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario is capturing moisture, and now you have water in your home wherever this vent is. You're getting a moisture issue, and honestly, that's where your fires come from. So they start in the dryer. Now you have all this lint built up in a super thin, aluminum foil wrapped vent. So it's just going to burn. It's got air coming from the outside. It's got air. Fire needs a couple things. It needs fuel, and it needs oxygen, and it needs air. It needs an ignition source basically, and heat. It's got all of it. It's got everything that it needs. So once it starts, it's got everything it needs to grow. It's got fuel in there. It's got air, and it's got a heat source that is being provided by your dryer. So all those things are just a really bad combination, and that's why this transition hose is a huge code violation, because that's where your fires are going to come from. It's just collecting that lint. It's getting, if it starts in the dryer, it makes its way out. It makes its way out of that dryer and starts collecting this lint. And now it just has this basically like a fuse that it can just run all the way through your house.
Well, and that's, once it gets in the attic, as well as I do, it's a loss.
Absolutely. Sign it off. It's gone.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you say that, because we do a lot of termite work. So we'll crawl spaces, and I see it all the time where you're talking about, that hose is broken apart, or it wasn't meant to be there in the first place. It wasn't done right, and they've just got dryer lint throughout their entire crawl space.
Oh, absolutely. So, especially if you go to a nicer home that, that hasn't been addressed. They never had an issue with it, and it's encapsulated huge. Like I just crawled in one crawl space, man. You could have gone down there and had like a dinner. It was super nice, but the vents
Those are nice.
Yeah, those are nice. It was super nice. I was like, man, this is fantastic. But I mean, the lint's broke. The dryer vent was broke off, so now I just got lint and some, and like I said, moisture's in there. And like you spent all this money, you've done all this to do, your preventative maintenance on your home and to keep it nice and clean and fresh air and all that stuff. And now you're just pumping crap in it. So it's just, it's a problem.
Well, we preach preventative maintenance on everything with pest control, termites. I mean, like we talked about, anything you do, you have to keep it, maintained, or it's going to fall apart.
Exactly.
So, all right. So what's something? What's the most interesting thing you found in a dryer vent? I know, in my business, we find all kinds of things: bird nests, rats, dead things, all that. So since you're getting a camera up in there, you get to see a lot more than I do.
So, we've seen some very interesting things. Lots of birds' nests. We rescued 3 birds and took them to the lady was awesome. We got those out and she took them to, I want to say she took them to Oak Mountain, and they saved their lives.
Sanctuary.
So the birds, took them to sanctuary so the birds could go and live. So we found several birds' nests. We running a camera after we cleaned this one out and pull the camera back down, and we'd been back there working behind this dryer for a while, and there was a frog. I think we put the camera out, it was at the vent cap, and maybe he just crawled onto it and rode that camera all the way back down to that dryer vent. So we found a frog, I guess. I don't know how a frog got back there, but bird's nest, frogs, and one of the most interesting things, so we used to clean out where the lint trap goes into your dryer. We used to clean those out. We had a bad experience with that, so we don't do that anymore. But I found a toothbrush in one of those, so that was pretty interesting. Full-on toothbrush in somebody's dryer.
I guess it got left in a pocket or something like that. I imagine you find a lot of coins.
That's the only thing I could think of. Yeah. For
sure. So where can people find you? So, listening to this, what's your phone number, email address, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the business phone number is 205-881-9115, and we have a website. It's Jobtown Cleaning I'm sorry, that's the email. The email is going to be jobtowncleaningcompany@gmail.com if you want to shoot us an email. And the website is just Jobtown Dryer and Cleaning. So, and we're on Google as well. So this is probably the easiest way to find us, honestly. So you can just Google, Jobtown Dryer and Cleaning, or just Google Dryer and Cleaning. We're on the Googles as well. So.
Perfect. What all areas do you service?
Man, we will go anywhere. We try to stick within the 30 minutes of Birmingham right now, just because we're just limited on manpower. But if you're having an emergency, and we'll upcharge slightly, but we'll go outside. We'll go pretty much anywhere if somebody's having a problem, and we can get to them within reason. I've been called. I had to tell a lady no that was in Gordo. I mean, that was like an hour one way, so
it's a little ways
it was a little outside of it, but. We don't like saying no a lot, so we'll go just about anywhere.
Well, good deal. Well, hey, Jobtown, love the name. Again, Matt, I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully, somebody give you a call and get that dryer vent cleaned.
Heck yeah, man, that'd be awesome. We love helping people out, reducing risk in people's homes, man. That's the name of the game. So,
Google Pesky's Pest Control.